So I still have the feeling it's gonna happen, that Max will jump ship and move to Mercedes. And maybe the Dutch Grand Prix is the perfect moment to announce that, just before the big summer break. Because I know that's not allowed anymore, but we want to see a bit of chaos. And I think in the wet, it's a great equalizer. And now the FIA just waited too long for the race to get going, and that was disappointing.
Ultimately, do you think something does need to change?
If Mother Nature tries to make a difference, let her do so, and let the drivers decide until when it's safe or not.
I look back and I'm a huge fan of Lewis, and you look through his career, he just hasn't been the same Lewis. Right then, folks, here we are. It is the Pit Talk Podcast. It's powered by Tyre, and we're back again. It's myself, Chris McHardy, Robert Doornbos. Robert, look at you. How the other half live, my friend. First things first, where the heck are you right now?
I don't even know myself anymore. No, I'm in Greece at the moment. I arrived here and we're doing a sort of a cruise, Turkey, Greece. Beautiful. I was really looking for a strong Wi-Fi connection for our Formula One podcast. So yeah, I found it here in a small harbor in Greece. So I'll give everybody a short analysis about the race yesterday.
Yeah, I just want to remind you, before we delve into all things at the Belgian Grand Prix, I want to remind you, Robert, that when you left here about 6 weeks ago, you were telling me that you were going to be at all the races this summer. Turns out you've been partying in Ibiza and you're now in a yacht in Greece. What on earth's going on? You've hoodwinked me, so you have.
I don't know where it went wrong, Chris, but it happens. It happens. Hungary is coming up, so I'll try to be there, and then obviously the big one, the Dutch Grand Prix, and but before that I'll be back in Dubai so we can catch up.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We've got a couple of special guests on the way. I know I've been promising that over the first few episodes, but we do have some big name guests joining the Pit Talk podcast, powered by Tyre. I want to just touch on a couple of things before we get to the Belgian Grand Prix. And I was going to say eventful. It was eventful for all the wrong reasons, Robert, but let's get into a couple of the other big talking points, because we've had a little bit of a summer pit stop, or yeah, very much a pit stop via Sardinia. Got to get to this, let's call it Max watch. You're the man on the inside, so much so the Max Verstappen and you are not talking anymore. What's the latest on Max's future?
Well, there's still a lot going on behind the scenes, because if not, this was the moment for Toto to announce that he would continue with his drivers George and Kimi. And Max obviously has a contract with Red Bull. We discussed this before, but talks are still ongoing. There's an official statement last night that came through the Dutch media that Max's exit clause is not triggered because he's still within the top 3 of the championship. But there's also an exit fee which can be paid. So that if everything would be clear, then it would be announced, which hasn't been. So I still have the feeling it's gonna happen, that Max will jump ship and move to Mercedes. But time will tell. And maybe the Dutch Grand Prix is the perfect moment to announce that, just before the big summer break. But up until now, it's still in the air. The only thing we know is that Max was also on the yacht. Toto Wolff was on the yacht. They were both in Sardinia. What a coincidence. There's so many choices to go with your boats. And suddenly they're next to each other. This is all, making a scene. If they would love to meet each other and talk in person, they both live in Monaco. They can have a coffee just around the corner and nobody will notice. Yeah, so that's still ongoing. In the meantime, I thought Christian Horner had a good spirit yesterday, because he posted a video that he was riding a horse on a Sunday, and he said, this is a different type of horsepower for me. The last 20 years he's been on the Grand Prix circuit on a Sunday, and this was the first time he wasn't. So it must have been a special day for him as well.
Yeah, just finishing up on 2 of those points there. We talked about it, and we have spoken about it in the last few editions of the pod. It was you that let the cat out the bag about those exit clauses. Max's father, Jos, not happy, speaking out in the media, calling you a headless chicken. We've had a lot of fun with that on our WhatsApp group. You are now known as the headless chicken wonder. So you are, Robert. Have you and Jos, have you spoken? What's the latest on that relationship?
It's like this, it's the media, and I know Jos quite well, so we'll meet in Zandvoort, definitely. I'll see him around there, and I think it's important to have a good relationship with each other, but also to share some insights, and I also have different informations that reach me and that I share with you guys. That's my job. And I think in the end it will all go well. But I would be surprised still if he would stay at Red Bull, because I think that an opportunity like this doesn't come by often. Big rule change in 26, engines that are so important. Nobody knows who has the best package for next year. But if you look at history, you can think, okay, well, if there's somebody that has an advantage, it should be a car manufacturer that can develop engines faster than, or in a better way than Red Bull can do. I mean, Red Bull has always had their Achilles heel, an engine manufacturer, trying to find someone who can supply you engines. Well, Mercedes said, we're not going to supply you engines. Ferrari said, we're not going to supply you engines anymore. So that's something that Red Bull always struggles with. And then I know they can hire the best people, but still an engine manufacturer can make a difference by investing more money outside the budget cap in developing this engine. And there are ways to do so.
So you're still of the belief we might have an announcement at the Dutch Grand Prix. That's a feeling that's shared by many, that this future, this speculation surrounding Max will be settled maybe at Zandvoort.
They're talking 100%. I mean, I think you agree now as well. If you read all the media internationally as well, on track, off track, everybody knows that there's something going on. And George Russell is the guy that is just waiting for his contract to be renewed, or for the telephone call that George, step aside, you have to go to another team, or George, you're going to get a new teammate, which is Max Verstappen. The most likely situation, yes. If not, it will stay with Kimi and George, but I don't see that happening.
We caught up, so we did. A little bonus. It wasn't necessarily a bonus edition of the pod, but you and I caught up. You've seen those clips on our social media channels talking about Christian Horner's exit, rather acrimonious exit from Red Bull. I know he was your former team boss. Have you shared any WhatsApps? Have you heard from Christian in the last week or so?
I just sent him a nice message, and also I posted something on the social channels that I really appreciate him. And I think that whatever happens on that day, it must have been a shock for him, but there are only a few people that will know really what happened behind those doors when the two bosses of Red Bull announced, okay, we're going to go in a different direction. And it's an abrupt decision, but it's the decision to be made. And I think at the end of the day, Christian has a great record in Formula One, so many titles, so many championships, not many team bosses that can say that. So, and you miss him, to be honest. You miss the battle of team bosses challenging each other. Like Toto Wolff was always challenging Christian and the other way around. And that's, sometimes you need someone like you, Chris, in the paddock that really stirs things up.
Yeah, that 20 dirhams is winging its way to you for that comment, Robert. Listen, that's kind of what's been going on since we last caught up. And it's important that we touch on some of those points. But there was the small matter of a race over this past weekend over in Belgium. I don't know about you, Robert. I came away from it a little bit disappointed. Me and the crew have been talking this morning. A couple of them happy with what they saw yesterday. A couple of us not. Where are you at with this? Well done, first and foremost, to Oscar Piastri. His lead is now back to 16 points. But as a spectacle, what did you make of it?
Listen, Chris, I mean, this is the big one. Spa-Francorchamps with the potential of rain is something all drivers look forward to, and all fans around the globe, analysts, TV presenters, radio presenters, everybody's looking forward to that moment. And I think the FIA took that away from us. And that's disappointing, because there was a lot of potential there in pre-build up to the race. They would say, okay, it's going to be a 3-day event full of rain. Well, Friday wasn't rain, Saturday wasn't rain, but there was a spectacle. There was good racing, a surprise sprint victory for Max. But then Sunday, the big day, the Grand Prix. And I have memories to Spa where it was raining. In '98, it was my first Grand Prix I witnessed, and it was a lot of rain, chaos, drivers running back to their spare cars. I know that's not allowed anymore, but we want to see a bit of chaos. And I think in the wet, it's a great equalizer. The talent of the driver comes up. Drivers with confidence will make a difference. And now the FIA just waited too long for the race to get going. And that was disappointing. And I think Lando Norris, having Lando on pole didn't help, because Lando was complaining a lot about the visibility. And to be honest, his visibility is the best out of the whole field. He only had the spray of the safety car. Can you imagine the guy in the back in 12th place, or even worse, in 18th place? So that is a shame they did it, in my opinion, because they took away a great spectacle of racing, and now it was more straightforward on the intermediates, and soon already just bolted the slicks on.
You know, it's easy for me to sit here, Robert. We've already referenced it. We don't need to go over old ground. I don't drive, so I'm not in a position to really pass comment on this. I don't, unfortunately. We will get that sorted by the time the Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi Grand Prix comes around. I promise you we will. But just on the subject of driver safety, there's a fine balance between entertainment and thrilling racing and the safety of the drivers. That's what we continue to hear. From inside the kind of garages, what do the drivers say? Obviously, they're not kamikaze. They obviously respect their own lives, for goodness sake. But this balance, where do the drivers sit on it?
Well, there's a simple rule between the drivers. There's GPDA, Grand Prix Driver Association. I was also part of that in the past. And we always had a rule, and we said, if you're not allowed or it's not possible anymore to go flat out in a straight line due to the potential aquaplaning, when the car just moves around when you hit the puddle, because the ride height is so low. If there's a puddle of water, the car will just becomes a boat, and you don't want that at 300 kilometers an hour. So if you're not allowed to go straight, flat out in a straight line anymore, we should red flag it and wait for better conditions. But that wasn't the case yesterday. And I think some drivers, they have more confidence in the wet than others. Max Verstappen, for example, in P4, he was really focusing on a chaotic, wet start to the Grand Prix, because then you can make up the most amount of time. Drivers in the back, I'm sure Lewis Hamilton was happy with the situation because he started from the pit lane, and due to the fact there was a safety car start, he was able to catch up really fast. Doesn't take anything away from his performance yesterday, driver of the day, overtaking so many cars and finishing P7. But yeah, most of the drivers are happy to race. Of course, they want to go home safe to their families. But at the end of the day, they're also the 20 best drivers in the world.
We've seen it a lot. When there's a good race, F1 fans will declare it the best sport on the planet. When there's a race that doesn't necessarily go to plan, all the doomsayers and all the critics are out in force saying that something needs to change. Ultimately, do you think something does need to change with F1, Robert?
Well, I think it's hard to explain to people that they have different type of compounds for slick tires. We have the hard, the medium and the soft tire, the white, the yellow and the red. For wet tires, there are two choices and we only see one. We always see only the green, the intermediate, which is good, but it's not good for very tricky conditions. And yesterday, at the start of the Grand Prix, there were very tricky conditions. So what we wanted to see is that the full wet tire would have been bolted on, which can deploy a lot more water and raises the car ride height a little bit because the tire is so much higher than the other tires. But for some reason, Pirelli doesn't. How should I say this correctly? I think they're too conservative with making the full wet tire, and there's too much complaint about drivers that have no feeling whatsoever with this full wet. So when they bolt it on, still drivers are complaining about aquaplaning and no grip and whatever, and then they red flag it anyhow. So yesterday they didn't even try to put the full wets on, even though they declared it a wet race. And I think that is a thing that Pirelli has to sort. It's more of a tire issue that can make a difference than a rule change, for example, because it's still the drivers that have to feel the grip.
That's a damning.
And if the grip comes from the tires. So Pirelli, I know Formula One is being very conservative or busy with the CO2 neutral and trying to get everything in place. There are also rumors that Pirelli won't take any of the full wets with them around the globe anymore, which means it's not a spectacle anymore. And like Max was the big loser yesterday, to be honest. In Silverstone, he had the setup that he was hoping for a dry race. It started to rain, so he lost out. And yesterday he was hoping for a wet race, and he lost out because the FIA waited until it was almost dry. And I think races shouldn't be decided like that. If Mother Nature tries to make a difference, let her do so, and let the drivers decide until when it's safe or not. And now it was, way too safe.
Yeah, it's a damning indictment of Pirelli. And I know you've said it on previous editions of this podcast, whereby Pirelli are actually, we can sit here and we talk about changing regulations, changing the car. We've seen a lot of comments from a lot of F1 fans, whether it be hardcore fans, fair weather fans, something's got to change. But listening to you there, the wet weather tyre is an important part of F1 racing, and Pirelli seem to be missing the mark on that.
I totally agree. I mean, the intermediate is a good tire, and we have seen some great racing on the intermediate from Pirelli that it turns out to become a slick, and you can really try to make the difference with your strategy, and that's how an intermediate should work, in my opinion. But a full wet tire, we should also have a proper functioning full wet tire, because looking at the history when there were two tire manufacturers battling each other with Michelin and Bridgestone, we had amazing wet races. I was always running a Bridgestone runner with the Minardi and the Jordan in the wet, and I remember that you could really drive outside. And I know the visibility is poor from a driver perspective. You have to look at, signs on the track when to hit your brake marks. But on the straight line, there was a lot of water that can be undone by the tire, by the threads of the tire. And I think that's what Pirelli is missing. And I'm not a technician about how you have to build a full wet tire, not at all. And Pirelli can do that, and they might have done so, but they should
it's interesting because I've been looking at some of the comments in the wake of Sunday's race, Robert, and a lot of F1 fans, as I say, up in arms over it. They feel that there was an opportunity lost. Yes, again, I go back to the safety important, but something needs to be done. So I've collated a little idea, some ideas from F1 fans out there about what could be done to improve the product. There is a feeling, and I'd actually quite like to get your views on this before maybe delving into this. There's a feeling that F1 right now is absolutely nailing it off the track. We know Drive to Survive, all of the hoopla, it's a celebrity spotter's paradise at these F1 races, but that perhaps the product on the track is not good enough. Do you agree with the sentiment there?
Well, I totally agree with you that the commercial side is booming in Formula One, and I think just with even the new movie that came out, where we also gave some tickets to fans, the F1 movie, I think it all adds up to new followers, new audiences trying to reach out to them. And at the end of the day, you shouldn't forget the sport where it all started 75 years ago. It started out of passion. Car manufacturers trying to beat each other, the best drivers performing at the highest level of motor racing, taking all the risks. And those elements you shouldn't take away or think too lightly about it, because if it becomes a show instead of a Grand Prix weekend where drivers are really pushing the limits of their machines and engineers and mechanics, etc., that should go hand in hand. And I totally understand Formula One, that they're trying to make the spectacle bigger. Like I'm a fan of sprint races. I really think the Saturday became better. There's less practice, which means you have to be on the ball straight away. There's only 1 hour of practice, then you go into qualifying. I think that all works. But yesterday I think we all agree it was a missed opportunity. So keep the focus also on growing the sport, but also in making the true values.
We are counting down to the Formula One Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, December 4th to the 7th down at Yas Marina Circuit. You can pop along now to abudhabigp.com. That's where you'll find your tickets, your hospitality experiences, and your after-race Gold Circle passes. Get on it now. We'll see you there. Does the sprint race really work? We were talking about this off air, and we were kind of lamenting the fact that other than a couple of changes further down the grid, you're not really getting much out of a sprint race, but you're a believer that it is good for the sport.
Well, it's important which circuit you choose, because like now it was not the best track to do a sprint race. I think for some reason it was just a DRS train, and Max had the best balance. He had the best option on aerodynamic levels, because not even Oscar Piastri could pass him with the DRS open on the long straight, which means, he has the best straight line speed. But if, for example, Zandvoort is going to be a sprint race weekend, and next year as well, I saw the calendar already, those short tracks, they can make a difference, because qualifying is so important. So you get a more exciting qualifying session on the Friday, you get a race on the Saturday, and another qualifying on the Saturday afternoon. So I'm a fan. It shouldn't be 24 weekends like in MotoGP. I think it's every weekend. But in Formula One, 6 Grand Prix as a sprint format. I understand that.
Okay, so you're a fan of sprint racing. Are you a fan of these ideas that are being thrown out there by some disgruntled F1 fans? They want to see this. They want to see this sport kind of jazzed up a little bit, for want of a better word. So let me ask you this: bring back refueling, yes or no?
I was a big fan of refueling. You know, taking away all the sustainability stories, and because there's a lot more weight you have to travel around with you around the globe, and I think that is one of the big reasons they stopped refueling. But refueling made a difference, and I'm going to tell you why. You had more like 4 qualifying stints. Like Max was pushing for 15 laps in the sprint race. He was doing basically 15 qualifying laps. And that's what I sometimes miss, that the drivers will jump out of their cars and they're sweating and they gave it their all. Because if you do refueling, you're also going to do the pit stop. You get new tires, new fuel, and you go out. But when the tank goes empty, the cars are so much faster. The G-forces are so much higher. So you can really push yourself and the machine to the max. So yes, refueling, I would be a fan, but I know it's not going to happen due to the sustainability for the future of the sport.
Of course. Yeah, it's an idea that's been put forth. I am mere the messenger, Robert, on this. What about a minimum 3 stops?
Minimum 3 stops. Yeah, I think they tried something like this in Monaco now recently. You shouldn't look too much artificially to make the difference, because DRS is already an artificial way of overtaking, which we all agreed on now. It's there and it will stay there. But to tell the teams, you have to do 3 stops, you're basically punishing the team that has less tire wear. Because if you have less tire wear, you have the perfect balance, the perfect setup, and you should be allowed to do 1 or 2 stops, to maximize it. So no, I wouldn't be a fan of saying you have to stop for 3.
What about narrower tyres? We're seeing a lot of people saying the cars are simply too big. What about the tyres? Make the tyres a little narrower?
Maybe just another tire manufacturer. I don't know if it's on your list, but try to get more competition on the tire level. I know we discussed this in our earlier podcast at the Pit Talk, but I think that will push Pirelli to further boundaries. I don't know who the tire supplier should be. Maybe Michelin or Bridgestone can make a comeback. But something like this will make a huge difference, because at the end of the day, it's a tire championship nowadays. The cars are so dependent on the grip levels of the tires, and if you wear them out too fast, if you heat them up too fast, you get graining. It will just allow you to your pace will be slower and you won't finish on the top.
I'm going to get technical now, Robert. You're going to have to give us all an explanation on this, but less aero grip and more mechanical grip in the corners. Are you a fan of it? And break it down for the layman, what you're talking about with that.
Well, basically the mechanical grip, it's easier to explain. When you start in go-karting, which is the basic, you have pure mechanical grip. There's no aerodynamic grip in a go-kart. There are no wings, there's not a lot of downforce. It's just you and the go-kart. When you go up to Formula 4, you get small wings, but they don't have any effect because the cars are not that aerodynamically driven. Formula 3, the cars are more aerodynamically driven. They have more aero than power, so it means the mechanical grip is less important. Of course, mechanical grip you need for traction coming out of corners. You don't want the car to just spinning wheels. You need good mechanical grip. But aerodynamics in Formula 3 and then up to Formula 1 are getting more important, and Formula 1 is just the biggest aerodynamic jump you will have in it from a junior Formula. If you have only mechanical grip in an F1 car, good for you. You have good traction out of a hairpin, but you're useless in the corners, and that's where you make up the time. Because carrying the speed, like Poelhorn, for example, this left-hand corner in Spa last weekend, they turn in at 280 kilometers an hour, which means you turn in, you get 5G on the body. When the moment you turn in, your body wants to go right, but the car is turning left. And then you really feel the aerodynamics. You get 5G on the head. That is something that makes Formula 1 so impressive, and they should never take that away. I think that to find the limits on aerodynamics is something that really made the sport.
Okay, so you're not in favour of that. You want to keep the aero as part of that.
I want to keep the aero, but I don't want it to become an engine championship, for example. So that's basically what next year is going to happen. If you have the best engine, your aero or mechanical package doesn't make a difference anymore. That's what we saw with Mercedes back in 2014. I don't think they had the best aero. They didn't have the best mechanical grip. I think the Red Bull back then was a better car, or the Ferrari even, but they had the biggest engine, so which means easy lap time in a straight line.
Loving this one. This is old school for me. Again, explain it for us. Someone out there wants no paddles. Let's go back to a gear stick. Does that make any difference?
Well, that's how you're going to learn how to drive, with a gear stick, yeah? So everybody in Dubai, watch out. When Chris is behind the wheel, don't give him a pedal shift. He gets a gear stick. So you go from first to third, back to fifth. No, you cannot take away the innovation of Formula One. And I think the pedal shift is the biggest improvement on that aspect regarding gear changes, because you lose a lot of time, obviously, with clutching and changing the gears manually. I did it in a Formula 2 car with a sequential gearbox, which was fun, but you have to use 3 feet at the same time. And I know this is going to sound scary for you. You have to use your left foot for the clutch, your brake for 2 toes on the brake and 2 toes on the throttle by blipping when you downshift. Maybe it's safer to give you just a taxi ride in an Uber, Chris.
Exactly. I'm going to continue doing that, Robert. Let me ask you this, actually, on that. Do you believe it's easier to drive a Formula One car today than it was some 15, 20 years ago?
Easier. Well, there's a lot of electronics, so I think leaving the pit box with the clutch will be difficult. But back in the days, you will be scared by just listening to the engine and then not knowing what to do. It's easier, yes, because you have tire warmers now, so you won't spin on the first lap straight away. I think in the old days you would just use the 1,000 horsepower and you would be standing backwards. And the machines in the old days were more impressive. If you ask any driver on the grid now, they all want to try the McLaren of Ayrton Senna or the Niki Lauda Ferrari, but they know the element of danger is so much higher because you feel in an open cockpit, you have simple seat belts. You know, nowadays when you jump into an F1 car, you really feel like you're protected, you know. So, yes, I think it's more dangerous, the old cars.
Yeah, we're coming back to that safety word. In terms of the race, Robert, and we will move the conversation on, I apologise to the producer because it's taken us an age to actually get to the action over in Belgium. Yes, there was the controversy over the late start, but ultimately, Oscar Piastri, first win in a while. Obviously, Lando taking the plaudits the last 2 races. A 6th victory for Oscar in 13 races this year. 16 points now the lead at the top of the championship. Can you, before we talk Oscar, can you break down what Lando did wrong? Lando, of course, starting on pole. He was overtaken the first lap after the safety car pulled in. What technically did Lando do wrong that opened the door for Oscar Piastri?
Well, Spa is a typical circuit that when you're on pole, it's not the best place to be. Yes, you want to be fastest on a Saturday, but if you qualify 2nd or 3rd, you shouldn't be disappointed because of the long run. After the La Source hairpin, which is normally if you have a standing start, it's a really short run to the first corner. And from exiting La Source hairpin till the next corner, number 4, turn 4, it's about 16 seconds, 17 seconds flat out. So there's a lot of momentum you can build. If you make a mistake exiting the hairpin, you will pay a huge price on top of the hill. And I think Lando knew that he was a sitting duck, even though he has not shown to me a lot of confidence in the wet conditions. That's also something you need, but you cannot make a difference in one corner. So he was looking his mirrors. Obviously, there's no DRS in wet weather conditions, but Oscar just had to run and said, okay, this is mine. Basically, what happened to Max and Oscar the previous day.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about Oscar and what impresses us the most. He's got that killer instinct. I know you were regaling the story of seeing him last year, I think it was, or earlier this year, where, you know, he comes straight out, he's watching a bit of football on the TV, he's straight out, he's business-like, he is just an absolute stone-cold killer.
But it's a mental thing also with professional athletes. I know you talk also to other athletes in other leagues like rugby or soccer or any championship, but in Formula One it's the same. And I know there was this great speech about Roger Federer that he said the difference between a champion and a very good tennis player is that how you cope with setbacks, with negative moments. And I think Roger said that he lost more points than he won. Percentage-wise, but the points he won were the most important ones. And I think with Lando and with Oscar, there's a similar difference. If I notice how they speak or their body language, like after Silverstone, you could have said that Oscar was very disappointed and he felt that he was robbed this victory by the 10-second penalty that was awarded to him after the race. But coming to Spa, he said, no, actually, I feel good about the previous weekends because I've shown my speed. We were up there, yes, the penalty was there. I parked it and I look ahead to Spa, ask him the same question, like, hey, you must feel well now, having won in Austria, having won in Silverstone. And he said, so you're on a roll? And he said, well, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to win here as well, because it's just, there was a momentum building there, but now we have to start all over again. It's Spa. So he always talks a little bit in, he doesn't push himself mentally before a weekend, I think. That's my opinion. And I think within the team with McLaren, they see it as well. They see a guy that is like killer, like you say. Oscar is a killer. He just wants to be up there, and he will just take it session by session, and will beat you at the end of the day, like he did yesterday. So it must be tough behind the scenes. I want to be a fly on the wall in this debrief room at McLaren.
Yeah, you're right. I guess the one thing that we can all take solace from, and I know this kind of flies in the eye, we want a competitive sport, but given the fact that Max is now, 81 points behind Oscar in the driver's standings, given the fact that McLaren from a constructor's point of view, Robert, are so far ahead, it should mean that team orders will never come into play. These guys are going to let Oscar and Lando race right until the final lap in Abu Dhabi come early December.
Well, all roads lead to Abu Dhabi, and it looks like we're going to get a hell of a final again there. And every 4 or 5 years, there's this huge final. 2021 was obviously the biggest one in Formula One history. We all remember that. And if two teammates will fight for the championship until the last corner at this famous track in Abu Dhabi, I think that's something the fans will appreciate, and we'll all look forward to experiencing. McLaren has the team principals has a big say in this, how it will turn up. If they will allow them to race, it's perfect. If they will say the papaya rules are going into place, for example, the guy that qualifies on pole, you're not allowed to pass him into turn 1, 2 or 3. Those are all these rules that I think team bosses can tell the drivers, but at the end of the day, they're also selfish athletes. They want to have the best results for themselves. It's eat or be eaten, like we say in the Netherlands, and I think that will go as well for Oscar and for Lando.
We saw yesterday, Robert, it's no real surprise, two drivers on different strategies. So Oscar going the intermediates, he then made sure that they lasted till the end. We saw that Lando went on the hards. The intricacies of different strategies. Let's talk about that for just a moment if we can, because I thought he had a big say in what ended up happening yesterday. After a race, the debrief, are you and your engineer, are you looking at what worked for your teammate and your rival? And what are you doing? What does the kind of hour after a race whereby you look through a strategy, what worked, what didn't work, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, before the weekend starts, you already prepare yourself well with what were the weather conditions, what is going to run plan is going to be, and during the sessions you have to improvise if something happens, or you're going to test a new front wing. Like Oscar didn't want the update on his car, and Lando was driving an update, so Oscar feels comfortable with the package he has now. He can extract the limit out of it, and maybe he hasn't found the limit yet. There's more to come from the car. And if you decide in the race, okay, if the moment we start the race on the intermediates and it will dry up, then I will go for the medium tire, the medium slick tire, because I'm running first, so I can decide first what to do. So that is something that all teams, a rule that all teams apply, that the lead driver of the team has first call to the pit lane. In this case, it was Oscar that said, okay, I'm boxing now for slicks, and I want the mediums. Then the engineer of the other driver thinks, okay, now Lando is in the lead, he will come in the next lap. Maybe we should do something different than Oscar. But if we do the same, we will just follow him to the finish. But if we maybe go for a compound harder, which was the hard compound, then we can try to do one stop, not knowing how the track will develop or how the tires will last in these conditions. So I think it was a bold move, and this is something you should do. Because otherwise you're just chasing your teammate down to the finish. And it didn't work out for Lando, but I think it's cool that he chose the option, because driving in those conditions on the hard tire was probably very difficult for him, because they don't warm up as fast as the medium. So we should see more of these strategic counter options than just following the guy in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is well done to Oscar. It's well done. Lando finishing second. Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari third. You've already referenced his teammate Lewis Hamilton, 16th. Started from the pit lane in the end. Eventually would finish 7th. A great drive for Lewis, but ultimately, Robert, you and I both know he's not in this game to finish 7th. Lewis Hamilton cuts a frustrated figure week to week. He talked about the upgrades simply not having the desired impact, certainly not for him. I know Charles Leclerc was a little bit different. Lewis now saying that this is basically our lot till the end of the season, that the focus over at Milanello is now on next year's car. So I guess for Lewis, it's going to be another year of frustration ultimately.
Yeah, and we don't want to see that, to be honest. I mean, we have this beautiful Ferrari in the backdrop behind you, and I think that was one of the biggest champions Ferrari ever had, Michael Schumacher, and so many champions afterwards that moved to Ferrari, to the Scuderia, to emulate the same championship feeling that Michael was able to deliver to the tifosis. And at the end of the day, Sebastian Vettel tried it didn't work out. Fernando Alonso tried it didn't work out. And Lewis Hamilton said, I'm not a Fernando, I'm not a Sebastian, I'm here to make a difference. And unfortunately, we haven't not seen enough to think he's right. In China, yes, he won a sprint race, but that's not why you move to Ferrari. You want to be, building up this team and bring them success again, because they have been waiting so long, Chris. 2008, Kimi Räikkönen is the last time they won a championship. It's just not Ferrari-like. And I truly hope they make a difference. They build a hell of a car in 2026. But, time will tell. And until then, it looks like a long season for Lewis.
Just on Lewis Hamilton, Robert, I found it kind of interesting looking on as I've done with Lewis. Obviously a huge fan. Who isn't fan of the 7-time world champion? And since, you know where I'm going with this, since what happened down in Abu Dhabi a number of years back, he's just not been the same Lewis Hamilton. And I appreciate, listen, he's got to be true to himself, but there's a negativity that surrounds Lewis. He's always, dare I say, a bit down in the dumps. He's always blaming the car. And some might say, listen, he's just being brutally honest. But does that play a part? Do you see a similar Lewis that just seems to be a little bit too down on himself, a little bit too hard on, not necessarily himself, but others around him?
Well, you're also a leader, basically, an example for the World Championship. I mean, he's a GOAT. Max Schumacher was the GOAT, and he's one of the greatest of all time. I think Max now has proven to be even stronger, even though he has less titles. But the biggest difference you can make as a driver is moving teams and then also winning a championship there. And I think that is something that everybody wants at the end of the day. Just to show you, I can do it in different circumstances with different machinery. And I think Lewis, since that day in 21, it could have been it was a negative moment for him. But people say he should have stopped afterwards. Or it's a big mountain to climb to recover mentally. And it looks like this mountain, he's still climbing to recover. I totally agree. And I would love to see Lewis, smiling again and see the fighting spirit. And I'm sure he was smiling inside the cockpit in his helmet yesterday when he was passing people and getting his groove back. But it's not enough, qualifying almost last and then finishing 7th is not why he signed up for Ferrari. And Ferrari doesn't want to be like this. No,
they don't. They've got ambitions of grandeur once more, because, certainly from where I sit and F1 fan for as long as I have, they remain for me the top dogs. Is that, it's maybe being a little harsh on your McLarens and your Mercedes of this world, but a performing and firing Ferrari is good for the sport.
I mean, Ferrari has something magical. Look at yourself. You're sitting in the studio with a Ferrari backdrop. It's the perfect picture, Chris. I mean, it just really raises your
emotions, right? It's an emotional sport.
Emotions. Well, it's all about emotions. I think Ferrari, 75 years ago, when the Formula One Championship started, they were there. They have always been there. And take Ferrari away from Formula One, and Formula One is not the sport where it is now, and it will never be. So Formula One cannot live without Ferrari, and I think Ferrari cannot live without Formula One. It's part of their DNA. That's why they sell so many beautiful cars and merchandise and whatever. But it's passion. It's all about passion. And I think Ferrari really shows it. And they deserve a championship-winning run, or at least a car where they can fight for championships. I mean, look at the stats. Charles Leclerc has only won a handful of races. since he joined Ferrari, and I think that's just not enough.
No, and Lewis Hamilton still waiting. Yes, he had the sprint win in China, still waiting for a podium. Got to get very quickly your thoughts on a team that I know you still bleed for, that of course being Red Bull. Lauren Mecky's first weekend as team principal. I guess, how would you give him a rating? Max won the sprint race. Yuki Tsunoda, his best qualifying in 7th, would eventually finish 13th. Of course, Max finishing 4th. What grade would you give Lauren and Red Bull this weekend?
Well, I think Lauren, he couldn't make a difference. You know, he got the phone call hours before we mentioned it on our podcast that Christian was being fired. So he didn't even have a lot of time to think about it or make a difference. He was trying to meet... There's a yacht almost crashing into us. But he was just trying to meet all the people in the team, getting to know them. It's a big promotion for him, coming from Racing Bulls to Red Bull Racing, the big organization. He's a more technical guy than Christian was. Christian was in charge of all the facilities and more of a commercial guy, more sales, more racing spirit. And I think Laurent Mekies really dives into the technical part. And he was quite clear, and he said, guys, if we want to keep Max Verstappen, we have to give him the fastest car we can build. And we have to change some things. So still people leaving, and so Laurent cannot do a lot in these 2 weeks, but I think he has obviously had a great weekend. You never get a second chance for a good first impression, having won the sprint race. It is on his resume, the first race as a team principal, we won. Good for him, but I think there's still a lot of work, obviously, to be done behind the scenes. So I give him a 10 for Laurent, but I give the team as a whole a feeling, I think an 8.
And that's not bad.
Better.
I think they'll take that after the weeks that they've endured, certainly recently. Of course, the road show now switches to Hungary this coming weekend, Rob. It's nice, isn't it? We've had a 3-week break, which is bizarre to me, given the fact that we've got the summer break coming up. But quick succession now, it builds narrative. We go from Belgium to Hungary. Talk to us about the Hungaroring. What can we expect, and what are you looking forward to this weekend?
It's a 180-degree difference, Chris. Spa is fast. You can play with your aerodynamic wing level, say like, okay, I'm going to trim it out a little bit so I'm faster in the straight sector 1 or sector 3. There was my wife passing by. You come and say hi. No, so there's more of a top speed aerodynamically focus. And Hungary is completely different. You put maximum wing, it's almost like Monaco. It's high downforce track, it's hot, it's humid. They call it a Mickey Mouse circuit because it almost feels like you're back in a go-kart. It's corner after corner, you cannot relax. Just a little bit on the straight line, but the rest it's fast and flowing. Lando Norris always goes well there. Obviously Max, some drivers have it as their favorite circuit, and it will be fun to see if they can find the right balance, because tire heat and temperature will make a huge difference.
And it's a good night out in Budapest as well, Robert.
It's a good night out after the race. In qualifying you have Q1, Q2, Q3, but then on the Sunday night there's an extra session. It's called Q4. It's only for a selected group of people, Chris. No pictures taken.
I'm very jealous, Robert. Right, wrapping things up. Where are you going to be next week? Because it's been Ibiza, it's been Amsterdam, it's been Greece. Where are you popping up when we do this podcast next week?
I mean, yeah, we wanted to start with this podcast already in Melbourne, and then I could have joined you way more often in the studio. But we're up and running, and that's the most important. And I think we're enjoying it, and we're making the best of the situation. I'm having a great summer in Europe. It's the first time we have a summer while we live in Dubai. So we're doing a road show through Europe. I will be going to Hungary, and I will definitely be in Zandvoort. But before that, I'll be back in Dubai so we can catch up and see what Formula One brings us.
I continue to hear, Robert, the life of a Formula One driver is stuff of dreams. Looking at you and knowing you as long as I have now, tell you what, life as a former F1 driver, it might just be better.
I don't know what you're talking about, Chris. Can I have another round, please?
You lucky so-and-so. I'm in the wrong job. I need to get a driving license before I do anything else, my friend. But listen, Thank you always. It's always great to catch up with you on the pod. Looking forward to having you back in studio down here at Cafe Miglia Gallery Cafe here in Dubai. Fantastic venue. But Robert Doornbos, for now, enjoy Hungary. Stay safe, my friend, and enjoy the sunshine of Greece.
Keep my seat warm, Chris. I'll see you soon.
Oh man, thanks, Rob.